because of that, I've had an inside look at DCD's budget and the economic development strategies. And I will say, one of the things that's been really great to see is your administration, the governor's administration in your department has moved on a lot of the wants that folks have been asking for a long time. The site development fund. As you know, a decade or so ago, we had our Business in Our Sites program, and getting that site funding going, and was one of the asks that we continually had to whatever administration. So just to see that, has been great. So thank you, for your leadership. Let's pick up on housing real fast. The critical infrastructure push. Obviously negotiations are about to start to heat up. How has the reception been, in particular in the House and in the Senate, to that push? As you said, housing does seem to be one bipartisan item. We're actually working with a number of folks in the House and Senate on some legislation on housing, around tax abatement work, but it does seem like there's a window here. Is that what you're seeing in the legislature right now?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Look, I can't speak for the legislature, but I would agree with you that when we talk to senators and House members, and when we talk to people all around Pennsylvania, they consistently, whether you're talking to a business looking to grow, whether you're talking to a social service agency, raise housing is one of their key issues. And I will say that, we did a huge amount of listening when we built out this housing plan. I think we did 18 roundtables around the state. We certainly did one here in Erie. I think it was like January. It was pretty cold day if I recall. And we learned a ton, actually. And what you see from our plan in this proposal is, yes, like our view of what we should do. Yes, a view of what the data tells us, and a sort of broad benchmarking survey we did across the country tells us will work. But it's also really a reflection of what we heard. Very much so, in fact. It's a plan sort of for Pennsylvania by Pennsylvanians. And so to that extent, I do think, I really hope that there is some consensus that can be found on some of the policy issues and eventually on the critical infrastructure issue. Let me just give you one point. Out of that $500 million PA sites fund, and again, the legislature supported on a bipartisan basis, we had a $10 million carve out for housing infrastructure. We call it a mixed-use housing infrastructure pilot program. We just awarded that $10 million like 2 weeks ago, actually, to 9 projects across the state. $10 million. We had $471 million of applications. Okay? And everybody knew it was like $10 million. So the demand is massive. I think the market dynamics show that in some cases subsidy is a must to build new housing. And while we cannot subsidize ourselves out of our housing issue, there is not enough subsidy in the state to do that. We do think that in certain places, especially focused on infrastructure, it's appropriate to do it. And look, part of the reason I'm here is to share out a little bit about our view. Part of the reason I'm here is to ask for your support. To talk to your legislators and others if you think it's important to focus on housing. Let folks know. We've tried to put forward a plan that we think is sort of broadly common sense. We're not going to agree on every single thing, but I do think, I agree with you that Republican, Democrat, rural, urban, suburban, everybody cares about housing. And I think that could be a recipe for making real progress here.
In your travels, throughout the state, obviously, you meet with a lot of developers in this space. Housing, market rate, and affordable. How are they receiving this? Are they excited? I know when I speak to folks, infrastructure, particularly, water, sewer, that horizontal stuff is just so important to development. How are they receptive?
It's been positive. There's stuff in this plan that is really geared toward protecting tenants and owners. There's also stuff in this plan, like you see one of the 4 main sort of goal sets is focused on just making it simpler and faster to build housing. Of course, no surprise, the development community is very positive on this. But this plan is a framework, it's specific, and there's a lot of work to do to make it real. We are going to shortly announce a new deputy secretary for housing at the state, senior level person reporting to me to coordinate and drive not just the housing activities that we run inside DCED, but a statewide perspective here. And I think we're committed to kind of getting this done. I mean, but we're really committed to kind of moving this ahead. When we took on housing, we knew it was big and complex and important. And we've got to, I think, execute against it with that same sense of urgency, not just this year, this budget, but really for the long term. And I think that's what we're trying to coordinate our agency to be able to do.
Okay, let's pivot to AI. Obviously, it feels like the state is really at the center of this infrastructure and energy built out for AI, in addition to a lot of the science behind AI. How is the administration, the plan that you guys rolled out in the budget proposal, how has the reception been to that as you're working with AI developers and firms? Are they good to go with you guys on that, or are they playing ball, or how's it going so far?
Yeah. Maybe can I take just one step back on AI? So, massive global force for change in the economy. And I think there's 3 areas where I think Pennsylvania can really capitalize, and I'll end with infrastructure, because that was really the nature of the question. One is, there's incredible intellectual capacity in the state. There's great startups and spin-outs, both coming out of our universities and not, just citizens building really great companies. And I think they can and will and are actually use AI to win in the global marketplace. And I think that is something we should focus on and celebrate and resource. That's part of that innovation fund. Number 2, I think less well understood and appreciated, but really important. The significant build out of AI has seen really significant growth in our manufacturing base in Pennsylvania. Companies like EOS Energy building batteries, but also companies like Hitachi or Mitsubishi Electric or others who build like switchgear and substation equipment and transmission lines. The energy infrastructure needed to sort of power America, a lot of it's built here in Pennsylvania, and those manufacturers are seeing real success here. And I think that working in that supply chain is a way to create significant high-paying jobs, improve communities. And then thirdly, infrastructure, which obviously has gotten really significant attention in the public domain here in Pennsylvania. Look, I touched on it in the slides, but there is a way, our view is that if you stick to the principles that we've outlined, which is bring your own power or pay 100% of the cost of powering your data center. 2, adhere to strict environmental considerations, especially around water use. 3, be fully transparent with the communities where you're operating. And 4, have a focused kind of a workforce and community benefits plan to ensure that the communities where you're operating benefit most significantly from these developments. That those are data center projects that we would support with fast track permitting capability, with a sales and use tax exemption, which is highly valuable to these companies, which is on the books in Pennsylvania right now. And I think that that is a responsible way to both pursue a home for these important capabilities in Pennsylvania, but to do it at the right sites and the right communities in the right way. And maybe let me just say like a final thing on this. There is a big national security and economic security component here too. And while Pennsylvania is only one state, of course, that's looking to develop these capabilities, we cannot lose to China in this race for AI. And in order to ensure we win, we've got to have the infrastructure to be able to support it. And I think that's an important reason, an important sense behind why we put forward these great principles and why we think we want to continue to support projects that meet those principles going forward.
Absolutely, and I should say, we've had a number of interests in the state, and I think, support from things like the Site Development Fund and others are going to be a big part of closing that gap. So we just appreciate, the partnership on that. Real fast, we'll wrap up. obviously economic development, the budget, all that is great, but one of the things that I think we've seen is that the governor also understands the importance of economic development brands. For the Commonwealth, obviously the Great American Adventure, if I get it right, I'm sorry, and also with you really repositioning Business PA and getting away from the kind of GAT past into that, it seems like the branding is really improved, and we had a lunch with site selectors in New York in the fall. And that was one of the things that they cited was, man, you guys seem like you're getting your stuff together in the state. How is that being driven, and are you seeing ROI? Obviously, you're seeing some ROI. Yeah. How's that ROI kind of being received in Harrisburg?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. We've done a bunch of stuff internally to reorient and focus our teams against both tourism and business marketing, which, while related, are actually not the same, right? When we market to businesses, we're essentially marketing to decision makers for companies, C-suite executives, real estate consultants. It's really like a B2B, like targeted marketing activity. When we market through Visit PA, through Pennsylvania, the Great American Getaway, we're marketing to actually both Pennsylvania residents, mainly residents within a drive of Pennsylvania. Our research shows that the vast majority of our tourists come here for 2 to 5 days on a drive time basis. And this year in particular, with the 2026, the 250th, which, by the way, I can't believe I didn't mention, it's the 250th anniversary of the country. We've got all this exciting stuff happening, sporting events and historical events. We've also targeted some marketing internationally because we think there's a real, the research shows us there's a market there. But look, we have been very specific and coordinated about how we go to market. We've hired new leadership actually in both domains to lead that marketing activity. And we have really seen results. On the business side, we have like all sort of record performance of all our social media accounts and things like this. But honestly, the number one metric of like, is business marketing working to me is pipeline. And our pipeline is like 6x number of projects where it was in terms of number of projects, and like tens of times X, 20 to 30X amount of capital and jobs. So we're seeing more projects and better projects. I think that's not exclusively because of marketing, but that's a key part of it. And then on the tourism side, again, tourism is a big business in Pennsylvania. It employs like over 500,000 people. You know that well here in Erie, of course, especially in the summertime. This is a real destination of choice for visitors. And so we put, again, with bipartisan legislative support, much more money into our tourism budget, which helps us market. But we've also, I believe, just upped our game in the products that we're putting forward, from influencers on social, a thing that I don't understand that well, to our TV stuff, to our web stuff. We've leveled up, and we think the brand's performing. The Great American Getaway brand has been performing really well.
I was going to say, I follow it, and it seems to be highly engaged. So,
good.
Mr. Secretary, I just want to thank you, for this great discussion, for your time in Erie, and I also want to offer, we're here to partner on anything to make this region better and this Commonwealth better. So, if you need anything, let us know, and thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
At this time, colleague Curtis Jones to the stage.
All right.
Wonderful. Let's give another round of applause for Secretary. Appreciate the Secretary's time. Take a moment to thank him for his willingness to be here and for the clarity and transparency of his presentation. I also want to take a moment as our legislators are preparing your spaces to come to the stage. Just want to thank all of our elected officials that are here. I shouldn't call names, but I'm going to call a couple of us. Our mayor, Mayor Daria Devlin is in the room. Mayor of Meadville, Mayor Kinder's in the room, Milking Supervisor Kim Clear is in the room, and of course we heard earlier from our county executive, Christina Vogel. So if I missed anyone, I apologize, but we just want to take a moment and recognize with a round of applause our elected officials. Again, this time I'm going to ask for our legislators to come and join me on the stage for this dynamic panel discussion that we're going to have this morning. I also want to take a moment to recognize a great ally and a great friend to Erie and to the Erie Regional Chamber and to the Erie region. Alex Halper is here from the Pennsylvania Chamber. We appreciate you for all of your help, government affairs, director. Much of your time is much larger than that, but we'll keep it simple for today. Let's just give him a round of applause for being here. His department's really supported the efforts that we have promoted here in Erie. We do have limited amount of time, and so this panel discussion is not to be overly exhaustive.